I think some people will have problem with what I did because my goal is for the animal to, at the end of things, to have the right enclosure. So if a client buy an animal and say to me, I'm ready to put the money to buy the full adult size enclosure, even if it's a baby of the year, I'm gonna go with it. I know that not everyone agree with that, but I found out that when you do that.
Welcome back to the Animals at Home podcast. My name is Dylan Perrin, and thank you so much for tuning in today. Today, I'm speaking with Marie Lavigne, who is the owner of Konoha Reptiles, as well as works at Exotics Addicts, which is a reptile store in Quebec. She works there with her boyfriend, Joe, who actually has started the store a few years back. We cover a lot in this episode. I think some of the main key takeaways are how to communicate with people in the hobby, how to push people forward in their husbandry in a nice way and actually, make improvements for the animals without creating these walls that we're so, classically used to in our hobby. Marie also gives us some really good pieces of advice as far as how to create snake breeding tubs that work as good transitions into larger enclosures. So obviously they're a reptile shop, they're breeding snakes. How do they take those young neonatal snakes and get them to start eating while simultaneously incorporating enrichment into their life that will allow them to have success long-term as a pet? I think that's some really key information. And we also discuss what it's like to work full-time in the reptile industry. I think it might surprise some of you. I think Marie is very honest in this episode, and as far, she obviously loves her job and is passionate about what she works at, but I think there's a tendency in our hobby to sugarcoat things, and just it's not all sunshine and rainbows when you're working with animals. And it's really important to understand that if that's something that you actually want to do, to hear someone honestly talk about it, say, yes, these are the amazing parts about it, but here's the work that also needs to get done that you have to do in order to be successful. So I think it's a fantastic conversation for that, and let's just jump into it. Enjoy. Well, Marie, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for doing this.
Thanks to you. I was so excited to do this.
Yeah, it's awesome. We met, 2 years ago now at the Canadian Reptile Breeder Expo, and you and your boyfriend is where I got my Japanese rat snake from. And so we kind of, and then we also ran into each other again at the last expo as well. So it's been fun kind of getting to know you just in that setting. And I know there's some really interesting topics that we wanted to cover today. So why don't we just let's hear your background a little bit. How did you get into keeping reptiles? Have you been doing this for a long time, or is it something that you came across more recently?
It's more recently for me. I think that surprised a lot of people because I'm so into it right now, but I'm mostly a girl that loves animals a lot. So I have a big background in the animal industry, but reptiles, I came across when I was younger, like with my brother, we got a couple of reptiles, but nothing serious. They were wild caught. They didn't last long. It was not necessarily a good experience with those animals, but later in life, I decided to adopt a gargle gecko. I saw that and I was like, that's a cool animal. That was 4 years ago. And I got my gargle and I stepped into Exotics Addicts to buy some isopod. And then things just...
Wow. So
yeah.
I want to hear more about that story, but just for people listening, that now reptiles is your full-time job. You work at Exotics Addicts, obviously. So that's, quite often on the podcast we talk about, you get the one animal and you slowly progress and then suddenly you have a room of animals, but you've kind of taken it to the extreme by starting with an animal 4 years ago, and now it's like every waking moment of your life, including your paycheck, comes from reptiles.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy when you think about it. And what's cool is that everyone around me knew that I will someday live from animals because I'm an animal trainer. I did work in the veterinary industry, grooming, things like that. But reptiles was unexpected. Like people were like, oh, you have one reptile. Oh, now you have like 6. Oh, now you work in the industry now.
Yeah. So was it mostly horses that you were working with before, or were you kind of involved with lots of other animals?
Horses is my main passion. So I started very young. I got my first horse at 15. I did competition. I did take lots of classes, training with some trainers and everything. And I learned a lot about animal behavioral with that. But I never wanted to work with horses because horses are so costly, make a living from horses is very hard. And I realized that's very young. So I did go take my course in animal training when I decided that my university study was not for me. So I did that class. It was 2 months on a zoo. And I trained lots of different animals, and I learned that pretty much all animals work the same way when it's for learning. And then I did train dogs and work in the dog industry to find clients and things like that. And then I did go back to university in marketing that time, and that was more successful to me.
Interesting. Yeah, you may have heard me talk about it on the podcast before. I'm not sure. I'm always amazed at how many reptile people started with horses. Like there's so many people who have this passion for horses, and it's moved over to reptiles. Yeah. I have no idea why that is. It's just interesting. So you picked up your first gargoyle gecko, and what was the transition as you how did you get wrapped into doing this as a career?
It was because I was still studying in marketing, and it was around COVID. And yes, so I got the gargoyle. I step in Exotics Addicts. I met Joe. He was looking for someone to work there because he was just starting. The store was so empty at that time. When I think about it, it's so funny. And I was looking at it and was like, wow, that's everything I was looking at online. It's like those things exist because I didn't know no one from the hobby. So like stepping in a reptile shop for me was like a revelation. So Joe talked to me. I talked to him about my experience in marketing, what I did before, like that I work with animals, and it was like, do you want to work? I was like, yeah. I lost my job as a bartender because it was COVID and I need a bit of money because I'm at school. So I started to work at Exotics Addicts part-time.
That's amazing. So how long, when did Joe open that store?
It was, I say 4 years, but it was 3 years ago that he opened the store. So maybe I got the gargoyle a bit before that. You know what I mean?
Okay, so when you bought that first gargoyle gecko, it was pretty early on in his store, like as opening it.
Yeah, it was just open. Like I got the gargoyle, and a couple months after that, he just opened.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah, but I can totally relate to that experience of you're wanting to get in reptiles, so you end up looking at pictures and things online and reading forums and going on Facebook, but you never actually see the animals in real life because you don't, unless you go to an expo or to an actual specialty store, it's just seeing that, and then you see them in person, and it's such a strange experience. Like, oh yeah, I don't know, I don't know how to put it into words, but I can totally relate to that experience.
And all the setups, all the lights, and like, because when you study that online and you have no experiences, that seemed to be a lot. And seeing Joe that is like, yeah, that animal needs this, and this. And I was like, how do you know that? And now I'm the one doing that,
Yeah. So you started working there as a sales associate, or I guess just helping manage the store. And
I was more, because at first the store was not like that busy. And Joe was doing mostly wholesaling at that time. So the store was there, but it was more like taking care of the animal, and I help him with like the accounting. Yeah, in English it's accounting. Yeah, things like that. So I started just like cleaning enclosure.
And at that point, did you start to see like maybe this would be something I want to sink my teeth into as a career?
I started to think about breeding at that time because seeing Joe breed animal and everything was very nice. And I had my male gargoyle gecko, so I was like, oh, maybe I should get a female gargoyle gecko or something like that. And I was very fascinated by the Phelsuma grandis. I've been breeding them now for 2 years, I think. So I got my Phelsuma grandis in that year maybe, and I started to breed eventually. So that was just like, oh, that can be something I can do like part-time, breed at home, take care in marketing, because jobs are good in what I do in life, what I was supposed to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was like, it's can be a nice hobby to just do. But it took a time before that gets very serious. I started building my breeding at home. I was trying to get species that Joe didn't have, because I was working with Joe animals, so it was like, why will I get the same as he has? And I think I'm a bit a person that like to go in the other sense than the others. So I was feeling that I was doing that by buying the animals that Joe didn't have. And at that time, because what you have to know that it's complicated right now to think to me is I stopped working at Exotics Addicts in the between of now and that time that we are talking about. So maybe I did like 8 months at Exotics Addicts, because in the summer I got a job in a city as I'm looking for the word. It's secretary, but that's a bit more than secretary. The
Yeah,
name of the job.
like administration assistant or something like that.
Exactly. So I got that, and it was way more money than Exotic Addicts. So I said to Jules, like, sorry, but I need to take that job, and it was very nice. And then I just go hang out at the shop just for fun with Joe and the people there. So that was a period of time too that existed between like my full time now and that moment now. And
Gotcha.
yeah.
So at that time, then you were kind of starting to do your own breeding projects as well, obviously, to kind of keep the reptiles as part of. And so is that when you kind of started your own business as well, like your breeding?
Konoha Reptile, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Is that how you say it? Konoha?
Konoha, yeah.
Konoha.
It's
Konoha,
from Naruto, the anime.
Yes. Okay. Gotcha. Cool.
So all the geckos have name from Naruto, so it's like a concept of mine.
Cool.
But it's funny because I had a big idea of how the people will know me in the hobby with that Konoha Reptile thing. And then I got into Exotic Addicts, so my marketing of myself just got mixed up, and I'm like, okay, that's all right. People don't know the anime thing, but that's very okay.
Yeah, because we kind of see it as this one and the same almost, right? Exotic Addicts and Konoha, or you guys are part of the same. Like what we always see you at the expo working together, obviously, and
Yeah.
So were you able to start bringing in geckos and whatnot into your own breeding business that you were able to sell to Joe to offer Exotic Addicts animals that he wasn't carrying?
I don't sell to Joe. I sell by my own.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha.
So I sell at the expo, I sell online, and now I think I'm gonna start to sell to Joe because Exotic Addict take too much of my time to be able to make time for like advertising my animal of Konoha Reptiles. So it's gonna be more practical to sell them in the store. So I met the client there, so that's like easier.
It makes sense.
But
yeah.
I was very independent at the beginning. When I started dating Joe, I was like, I don't want it what's happening right now at that moment. I was like, I don't want our things to be one thing for people. I want to have my own thing because I don't know, couples or days are not always working out. So I was like, I don't want to lose my place in the hobby. That was what I was scared about.
Yeah. That makes sense. Can you list off some of the species that you do work with?
Yeah, I have the Phelsuma grandis, the gargles, the chameleon gecko. I have agricoli and VRD. I have many species of Strophurus. I don't actively breed them for many reasons because when I tried to, it was more difficult than I intended. And this year I decided to enjoy my animals rather than be like focused on breeding because like I realized when I was very focused on breeding and making the action to make sure the animal breeds and like searching for eggs and being like very consistent on those things, I was less enjoying taking care of my animals. It was stressful, like, oh, okay, is this working? Is this, and I'm doing that at Exotic Addicts. So I was like, why do I have all those cool animals at home if it's again work for me?
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, yeah, exactly. Once you start to have to really pay attention to, different parameters and temperatures and, looking, like you said, looking for eggs, it becomes a different thing than just in the enjoyment of watching the animals, right? Now you're worried all the time and you're trying to make sure things are correct.
Yeah, and I have couples geckos that need cooling to breed properly, like all my Australian species. I have the Reptile, the Strophurus, the velvet gecko that needs that. And the thing is, that's been 2 years that I wanted to do a cooling, but every time something happens in my life and I'm like, I don't have the time to do that properly right now. And I was feeling like I was failing, not doing it, and then I realized that, is it so important to breed or just talk about my animals, get the experience, have fun with them? Is it okay for me?
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at. And like, in the expo, I'm seeing so much YouTuber that just enjoy their animals, show what they do with their animals. And I'm like, maybe that's something that I'm more in sync with, like having animals just to take good care of them. And if they breed, that's perfect. But being the main reason to keep animal when they are in your arm and it's your pets, I don't know. I just think it's stress on top of everything I'm already doing.
Yeah, it can sort of drain you as far as the enjoyment goes. And so do you keep your animals at home? Like, are all the geckos in your own home, or do you keep them at the store?
I have couples animal at the store right now just because like quarantine thing and
Sure.
things like that. But most of my personal animals are in my home. And that's why for me, Kona and Exotic Addict are very separate because
Yeah.
like the thing is our living room is actually the reptile room. And Joe is fighting so hard to have some place into it, to have some animals of his own at home because I'm taking all the place right now. And yeah, he's struggling just to get a couple of things of himself in
Yeah.
the home.
That's funny. When you were talking about potentially, cooling the Australian geckos, had you thought of a plan of how you were going to do that? I'm just curious.
Yes, because there are different techniques like I learn about. Some people just will gradually take the lights
Yeah.
down, like
Yeah.
the heat, the like how many amounts of time, etc. You can do that like that, just and then go to what you are and
Aiming
thinking
for.
about.
Yeah.
Yeah, aiming for. Thank you. Or the other thing is you can go further than that and very cool low temperature, like because room temperature without lights, it's already cooling for a Strophurus, but you can go like lower than that. In Europe, they do that. So I was like, do I want to do that? Because Joe is cooling the color breed at Exotic Addict.
Mm.
I'm in Celsius, so it's like it goes to 14 Celsius.
I
I
have
don't
my
know
little
in
chart for
Fahrenheit.
our American listeners. So that's like 57 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yeah, so equal at that temp. That's too cold for the surfers, but still don't know how. So I was like, if I want to go cooler, we can do that. But at first, I wanted to do the first kind of cooling and then maybe do that kind of cooling if I talk with people doing that kind of cooling. But yeah, at first, I wanted to do a simple cooling, just lights off, less heat, just UVB in the day, but like less longer than usual, things like
Yeah.
that. But the full cooling, I'm scared about it. Even with the culprits, you'll do it every year. And every time I'm like, it's so crazy. We don't feed the snakes. I feel so bad when we do it. Like, and I cannot go see my snakes, but it's not but I mean, I have some snake at Exotic Addict that I love.
Yeah.
So I'm like, it's like, you cannot handle them, Mary. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm used to, I like that one. Why I cannot? But yeah, I find it hard on me to just like, let the animal alone, don't feed it, just it's for my I think it's something many people in the hobby like meet the time when you realize that reptiles are not like us mammals.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah.
For
Exactly.
mammals, the idea of not eating is very strange.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it can be hard to process. You're like, really, you're not going to eat for 3 months? Okay, this is like you do feel bad for sure.
But this is what we call I don't know the word in English, but it's anthropomorphism.
Yeah, anthropomorphizing them. Yeah.
Exactly. That's what we do, and that's something I like about me and Joe because being more in the animal industry than the reptile one specifically, I have all of those feeling about animals that sometimes reptiles people are like, yeah, but reptile are not like that. But that's make me closer with the customer.
Yes. Yeah.
When they do things with reptiles that are not like making sense for reptiles, but making sense for any other animals, I have lots of empathy for them. Like, yeah, you want to do good, but that's not good for that animal. So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They come in and they're looking for like a slightly different pet experience, something that they might have had with like a cat or a rabbit, or example. And yeah, so they come in with a sort of a different understanding. And where people who are just reptile people can be cold isn't the right word, but they see them in a different way. It's not, they can understand that maybe the animal doesn't want to be pet all the time and things like that. How does Joe cool the room? Does he just, I mean, I know you guys are in Quebec, so it gets cold in the wintertime. What does he do?
He used a window, like we close the door and we let but I think it still keeps some heat in the enclosure.
Gotcha.
The underbelly heat, he still keeps some quantity of that to make sure that if the animal is very chilly, you have that available, but the room is very cold.
Yeah, that makes sense.
With the window, we are able to do that because in Quebec, outside is very freezing.
Yeah, it's minus 28 in Manitoba this morning when I was walking to my car. So that's a little too cold to have the windows open, but it does make it easier. You're not having to
he open and close depending on what he needs.
For sure, yeah.
Honestly, Joe is doing so many things that I'm like, because with Exotic Addict, like I took more and more place in the company with times. And at first, I was just doing the marketing, taking care of the clients and things like that. But eventually, I had to put my nose into the breeding part more.
Mm-hmm.
Like this year's, I was the one doing the pairing for the Cresties, the Gargle, and the Leos.
Okay.
So I did all the pairing at Exotic Addict for those species, and I have Excel files with all this with this, how many eggs and everything. So that was my first year managing that part of the Exotic Addict. I don't think I'm gonna do it again because me and Joe just had a meeting saying that we split things too much like that in our task, and right now we need to like separate more clearly. But it was fun to just like be the one taking the decision for part of the breeding.
Yeah. But that must be a challenge, right? Because it's a relatively new business. Like you said, it's only a couple years in, and you're both new to it in a way, even though you've been doing it for a few years. It's just learning how to run the business efficiently
You
is
have
probably a
to know
challenge.
that Joe always had a reptile business. He just sold
Okay.
his part to his partner. He was the owner and the founder of MSR
Okay.
Emporium, that is a wholesaler. So he did like, I don't know at what age he started, but Joe has been in the industry for like all his life. So he had the experience, and that matters.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. He's pretty young. I guess he's been doing it since he was probably in his early
He's
teens,
still
I guess.
36.
Oh, is he 36? Okay. He looks young there. So you can tell
He
Joe
looks
that, right?
young. We look young. I mean, I'm gonna have 30 on the 2 February, so I don't think I look 30.
No, not at all. So that's why maybe it seems like you guys have less experience, considering how you're younger than you look. So then, can you just give us a quick rundown of the store, just for people to visualize it? As far as you mentioned some of the animals you work with, but what else are you working with? And are you guys doing lots of sales of products and things like that as well?
Yes. So right now at the store, we run the store in our own way. So the first thing, we only have brand that we believe in. So like we have Zoomed in store, and it's the main brand that we have. We have Arcardia, things like that. But for example, I don't have Exoterra in store. For us, Exoterra and Zoomed were too close into product, and we preferred Zoomed. And when I bring in a product in store, it's because I know I'm gonna advertise that product client, like tell them this is a good product, so that's good for the animals. If I don't believe in a product, it's not in the store. I know some store have product because clients want product, but we don't have the space to do that. And I feel bad when someone buy a red bulbs. I'm like, we had a couple red bulbs because they come into set that we bought, but I feel bad when people bought it. I'm like, it's not good. Take the ceramic if you want to eat at night. So all the product in Exotic Addict, we chose them carefully, making sure that we will be able to tell to people that this how to use them, and it's a good thing to use. After that, we have lots of animals that we breed of our own that we sell, but we also buy and trade with other people to offer a larger diversity. Other things that we do are backgrounds. We make our own backgrounds, and we have a technique that we are able in between 1 to 3 hours to make a full background with bioactive soil, and the client can go home with the tank.
Wow.
Yeah.
So who has to do that work? You or Joe or any of the other staff?
Me and Joe.
Okay. Wow.
Yes. So we do that service. It's a service that you have to pay. Obviously, it's not free, but people go home with a setup that is made for their animal with their taste. So I think with that, people take better care of the animals, because I see sometimes enclosure that looks like crap. You know what I mean? Like it's like a water dish, food dish, one hides, maybe two if the animal is lucky, one branches, one fake plant, a soil that is not keeping humidity or doing anything good at the end. And people lost interest in the animal, I think, when setup looks like this. But when you sell a full setup planted and everything, and where the animal go around because they feel safe, because they have coverage and things like that, I think people take better care to the animal. They value more that animal.
Yeah, they just have more pride in what they've made. It just looks nicer and they can enjoy it more.
Yeah, and family getting pets, it's always a concern of mine, because it's always a bit for the kids.
Right.
Even if you say you don't buy an animal for kids, you know that it's for that. So you need to find a way that the parents feel implicated in that process, that it's not just a toy for the kids. I don't feel okay with that. So I make sure that people are ready to like build a proper enclosure, give a proper size enclosure. I actually have sometime sold animal in a setup that I thought it was a bit small, but I make sure that they have enough enrichment in that setup, because you cannot force people to see the same way as you. That's not how
Yes.
it works, and you will not have good results with those people. They will just go by in a regular pet store, Reptile, and do bad things. So you are better to meet in the middle than like just be there and I like, if you don't do that, I'm not gonna sell you the animal. That is not working, and I don't think it's like the good way to sell and get people into the hobby.
Yeah, well, you want to work with them, like you said. Like if someone comes in with this certain frame of mind, and you just are completely like belligerent to them and tell them that they're not doing the right thing, like you said, they're just going to go down the street and buy the next animal, or go to PetSmart or whatever, and do whatever they want anyway. So if you can at least bring them into the fold and teach them, no, this is a better way to do it, and hopefully you're kind of start a communication and build a customer base that's willing to slowly improve over time, rather than just disappearing and never coming back.
Everyone were beginner at first, and that what I find funny is when I talk with experienced keeper. I don't know for you, Dylan, but most of you had reptiles when you were younger in the bad way of owning reptiles, and many of now nice keepers, nice breeder had like very crappy setup, very bad way to keep animal, because pet store didn't tell them the truth when they, not the truth, but the right things, because they didn't know when they were like 10 or 8 trying to get their first reptiles. So those story, I'm like, yeah, but those new people are still like that when they get into the hobby. So what we have to do is find ways to make available the information to them to how properly care for animal. Why to not buy wild cuts? Why do we all started with wild cuts? That's the thing that I'm like, it's ridiculous. I mean, my first reptile that came in my life was water dragon.
Yes, so obviously wild caught.
Yeah, and it didn't last at all, and it was very sad. And we were like, oh, reptile, it's like you buy a full equipment, you do everything they tell you, and the animals still die. That was the feeling we got.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And there's still a lot of wild caught Chinese water dragons if you go into most like pet stores.
People ask for them.
They ask for wild caught?
No, but for water dragons or things like that. And then you explain that they are wild caught, and you try to make them aware of why it's not a good pet for them. But at the end, you're not the one making the choice. Yeah. I'm not going to sell that animal because I don't carry that kind of animal in my store. When I have wild cuts, that's the thing with Exotic Addict. When we have wild cuts, it's mostly for breeding project. So when we have imports coming, we are like, okay, we do pre-sale. It's pair mostly that we sell if we're able to get pair. We work with a lot of breeders to try to like establish some species in captivity. We try to help them to have their goals obtained. But I will not bring like crocodile skinks to sell one. Wild caught crocodile skinks, you buy a pair. I'm not gonna sell you one if you don't have the other at home, and if you don't want to breed, I will say that's not the right pet for you.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's a good way to go about it. You don't need to be buying wild caught as just a single one-off pet.
That's so sad.
Yeah. It totally, and like you said, a lot of times they don't thrive anyway, so it's just an animal that's going to die. If it's somebody that actually wants to breed it, they're going to spend the time like really focusing on their husbandry, making sure that they've done everything you need to do to a wild caught animal, hydration and whatnot. When you started keeping, and I feel like because you had you came from the dogs, cats, the horses, like you said, working with mammals more, did you approach reptile care from a more, what's the word, like less clinical? There's a lot of people who keep reptiles, racks, the basic, the tub. There's nothing in there. Did that seem unnatural to you when you first came into it?
Yeah, I was feeling so bad for these, and that's so funny because, how can I say that? At first, it was very important to me to make nice enclosure, and the first enclosure I made for Itachi, my gargoyle gecko, it was like I didn't want bioactive. I was very afraid of bioactive. I was like, this seemed very complicated. I'm gonna buy a lot of stuff, make something nice, make many eyes and things like that. But I was like, bioactive, I don't want to go there. But then I met Joe and I saw bioactive there and I was like, okay, I want to do it. So I planted the enclosure, do something nice. And then I was like, okay, enrichment works for reptiles. And I noticed things I think people don't always notice when they are not like, because having studied animal behavior, like when I put them, I have a magnetic hide for Itachi. And at first, he was not touching it. I paid a lot of money for that kind of eyes, and the gargoyle was like, I don't want to do anything with that. But a couple months later, it started to be his favorite spot. And then I learned something that I teach the client and I applies to every reptiles. Reptiles need to be like used to something before using it. Like I noticed that a reptile that never saw something, when you put that in their enclosure, they will like just not touch it. Like it's very funny. I'm like, it's like they're like, just I don't touch that. But if you give them times, because sometimes people after 1 month will just remove the thing and you don't want it, I'm gonna take that out. But they need more time to acclimate to that kind of stuff. So now I know when I make a new enclosure, if the animal is not using it like I would like them to use it, just give them times. And times is not 2 weeks. This is not time for a reptile. Time is like months. 2, 3, 4 months to get used to the new things you put there.
Hey there, I'd like to take a quick break from the episode to thank this week's sponsors. We have Exotics Keeper Magazine, which is a herpetoculture-based magazine out of the UK. If you live in the UK, you can have the physical magazine delivered to your house on a monthly basis for only a couple of pounds a month. If you happen to live somewhere else in the world, you can sign up for the digital copy of the magazine, which is completely free at this time, which is an incredible opportunity to really sink your teeth into some amazing articles. It is a very well-rounded magazine, including articles on advancing reptile care or just exotic animal care in general, conservation efforts, zoo news, and probably my favorite articles are the ones that are written by people who keep particular species. So you have features on particular species, including their care guide, how to breed them, the nuances of caring for each species. So if you are looking for more information, head to exoticskeeper.com. Again, the digital copy is free, so there's absolutely no reason not to sign up for it. I would also like to take the opportunity to thank Custom Reptile Habitats for sponsoring the show. There is an affiliate link in both the YouTube description and the show notes. If you use that link and purchase something, a commission comes back to me at no extra cost to you, which of course helps support your own animal with a high quality enclosure and helps support the podcast and keep the lights on in this room. Let's jump back to the episode. Yeah, that's a great point. And so did you and Joe have kind of different care styles as you started to become more involved with Exotics Addicts? Was there things that, like, did you feel like you wanted to change the way some things were done? And did that cause tension?
Yeah, and that was very funny because I was like, your animal need enrichment. Because I mean, for cat and dog, I will put lots of things for them to be like having something to do. I find it very sad when a home just have a litter box and 2 bowls for the cat, and that's it. For me, it's not a way to have a cat. So you need cat tree, you need toys, you need like the cats need to have his own space and his own thing, and to have something to do other than make you trouble.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was like, they need enrichment, and online it's still a thing for reptiles. So I was like, you should do that. And then I learned something else, very important when you're breeding. Keeping it clean and easy.
Right.
Okay, because at Exotic Addict, we have staff. It's not always me and Joe. And if I put too much enrichment and the door is not closing easily, this is a risk for a staff to not close a door properly and to have an animal escape. If I put too much stuff and it does not get cleaned properly, that's not good for the animals. So I had to learn the proper amount and what is reasonable with the number of animal, and not only the number, I mean, just they are young animal. When you breed, it's not like fully established animals, and you need to keep that to another standard. And for a full-grown animals, you need to be able to check easily on the animal. But between the full setup with leaf, bark, everything, and the rack that is just a water bowl and substrate. You have a whole world between the two.
Yes, yeah. There's it's not a binary situation, one or the other. So can you just give an example of the amount of enrichment you might include in a setup that's for breeding?
Yeah. I'm gonna go with babies, and then I'm gonna talk about the breeder.
Sure.
So for a baby, what I want for a baby snake or things like that is for him to be ready for his next home. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I know that people will mostly not do racks. I sell to breeder that do racks, but most people gonna buy an enclosure for the animal. But I'm still reduced to the tubs we have, because the thing you have to know when it's a way that it's a revenue. I don't want to talk about it like we still make money from our animals, me and Joe, but we don't want to make them like, you know, I mean, like the bad way, like just abuse the animal to get money. That's not what we want. But
yeah,
the thing is, we still have to live from it right now. That's the choice we have made. So the tub that we already have at Exotic Addict need to be used. I cannot just say to Joe, we change everything. That's those tubs. I don't want them.
Mm-hmm.
That costs money. That costs too much money to do that in 1 or 2 years, you know?
Yes.
So what I did is like, okay, I thought about what I got from my course into animal behavior, and I was like, enrichment is many things, and texture is one of them. So how many texture can I fit in that box for that animal to discover different textures? So you have the substrate, you have the size of the bins, and you have the bowl. So many times I will use a bowl of a different texture than the bin. That seems very simple, but that's still one thing more that the animal can learn, like different than the texture of the bin, because many bins have bowls inside of them, like that is
just like a plastic mold. Yeah.
Yeah, but we use real bowls, so sometimes it's ceramic bowls. So I find that great that they have another texture to see. Then I try to every animal to have an eyes, if they like to have an eyes, because sometimes I can clearly see that the animals that in his tubs, the eyes is just a nuisance for them. Depends on each animals. And then I will try to put them like a piece of leaf, a piece of cork or something like that, but 1 or 2 things, not tens, not like just them to have something, but just if I open my rack, I need to be able to just lift up the eyes and see everything I need to see, and be able to clean that easily and not have to remove 10 things to clean my bin.
Right. And so when you say this is to get them ready to move on, are you thinking like just to give them a preparation for interacting with different textures, or what's your thought process with that?
It's like cork is mostly used within our client enclosure. So a piece of cork is something I like to put for them, something like, because like I said, when you put something new in a reptile enclosure, sometimes they don't want to touch it. So I try to use things that they will have in their enclosure. So when they see that, they are like, okay, this is something familiar. Can I do that for every single animals? I don't know. But I try the most as I can. And the first priority is still health.
Yeah. That's a great point. Like even just like the smell of cork and the feeling of cork, if you include even a small chunk of that in their like little rearing tub, you know, when they do experience maybe a large cork background, it's not going to be totally bewildering to them. It will be a familiar scent and a familiar texture.
Exactly. And the thing is that Joe brought up to me is like, some animals are not easy to start to feed, mostly snakes. I own snakes right now because people mostly know about my geckos. I have my own snakes, and I see like babies, like when they hatch, they don't eat at the same pace. Like the first meal don't happen at the same pace for every snake. So you have to make that a priority. So make choice for the animal, and sometimes it's not what looks great for us that works the best. But when the animal is eating great and doing great, that's the time to like, okay, what can I do for that animal? But you see, right now at Exotic Addict, we are maybe thinking about selling some breeder to not breed like 2 common species.
Yeah. Like things that you constantly see, you want to maybe not breed those, so you're not adding to that market.
We were doing our own corn snake, and we have so many like corn breeder that we like a lot that we can buy from. that I'm like, honestly, like caring for all those baby corn snake to sell them, like, because you produce an amount and then you sell that over the year, and that works. But you still have to take care of the animal for that whole
Right.
year. And I'm like, that's a lot of work. But
Yes.
Joe is a breeder and he wanted to breed. So like Exotic Addict was started as Joe was seeing it for himself. But now that I am into it, we are seeing it differently. And just as well as having a life outside of the store, like we have to achieve that now because he is not a bachelor anymore. So we have to think about couple time and
Yeah.
things like that. And
You can't
working
just breed
together,
snakes all day.
yeah, I mean, working together doesn't count as time together. I don't think
No.
so.
No, definitely not. No, that adds a challenge to a relationship. Obviously, running a business together. So yeah, you certainly want time away from that as a couple. And what was I going to say? I had two questions. One was you were going to talk about how the breeder's environment was. 'Cause, you know, we can talk about that as well. But you know, as you came into the business and you maybe started adding some textures and a little bits of enrichment here and there into the tubs, how did Joe respond to it? Like, was he open to that, or how was that discussion?
Okay. What's funny, because we talked about that, I think, 2 weeks ago, me and Joe, because we were thinking about the time where I was working for him, but not with him. And
Right.
that's funny because I think I'm one of the person that have challenged Joe the most over the years. Even in his old business, I'm a challenging person, but I'm polite. So that's hard on people because normally when people doesn't agree with you, they will push, but not in a nice way. But I'm pushy, but I'm nice and polite. So Joe
Mm-hmm.
was like, this was hard for me to just shut you down when you were coming with all your ideas because you were still like working well, good employee, telling me nicely the things like. So it was like, okay, we're gonna try some of your things because you make your point.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed when we became a couple, I was less nice because I was more close to him, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
And then he was less open to my things. I was like, that's strange. I thought it will be the contrary. And then I adapt. I was like, okay. And eventually, like, Joe want the best for his animals, and Joe very love Reptile. Like, you should see him with Seth is BCI. He have his personal BCI, and like, just the love that he have for her and how he take her out the enclosure, he takes her in his arms and cuddle with the snakes and like be like, look at my snakes, how pretty it is. And he do that a lot with his frogs too. Like he called me every night to go up front his enclosure to look at his frogs. I'm like, yeah, Joe, I saw the frogs, I live with them, but look, they do that, and look, I put that new branch and they are on the new branch. And I'm like, well, that's nice, but I was doing something,
Yeah,
so
yeah, yeah.
enjoy your frog. So, like when the only reason why Joe was doing the thing he was doing is like, that's all things were done, and that's
Yeah.
what he knew. And new ideas don't afraid Joe. Like, he likes that. He likes to learn new thing for his animal. I think at first the main problem was like my amount of experience versus is, but he learned that when I say something, it's because I have done research and I'm not just doing like, yeah, we should do that, and I don't know if it's good for the animal. I don't suggesting if I don't know if it's good for the animal, or if I don't know if it's have been done before,
Mm-hmm.
or if it's a completely new idea that I really don't know, like the result of that idea. I will tell it to Joe, like, hey, I think about a thing. What do you think about it? Because I never saw that, but I don't know why it never has been done. So
Sure.
yeah.
Well, and I think that's such a good point that you had made. I think even when we were DMing at some point, you had sent me a message. It's just because the two sides it becomes very contentious between we have these people that think it needs to be, this is how you need to care for your animals to care for them well, and then you have the more old school people, and so obviously there's the divide. And I think two things I learned from you: one is being nice actually is probably the best thing as far as helping somebody move forward towards progressing their care, because if you're not nice, which is what happens online all the time, most people are quite mean, you don't make a change. So if you're actually wanting to help that animal change, then you have
Have
to be
you go
nice.
on Facebook group lately? Because those are terrible.
Yeah, So it's almost like if that's the way you're trying to help someone, then you're probably not going to help them to begin with. But the other
Yeah.
thing is, and I think sometimes we forget this, is even if we're looking at somebody whose care style is not what we would think is up to standard, it's easy to forget that those people actually most of the time really love their animals and they actually want what's best for their animals. And sometimes they just didn't come across the right information or haven't been exposed to it. But we almost demonize them in a way where they must hate their animals. Well, no, actually, they actually want their animals to thrive and do well. And if you approach it in the right way, like you did with Joe, it's actually quite, they be
And
receptive
honestly,
to it.
like, I just want to make it clear, Joe helped me more than the
Other way
contrary,
around.
you know?
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, Joe have way more experience than me, so mostly of what I know is Joe that have teach me that. And I mean, Joe is taking great care of his animals, and he is very good to keep a good weight on his animals.
Mm-hmm.
That's something he teach me that I'm like, because we tend to have fat or skinny animal in the hobby. I rarely see animal at a nice weight in the hobby. Like it's a hard thing to aim for, like having an animal that is healthy in weights. And Joe is good for that. Like every animals have a nice weight, and he even think like, okay, this is a breeder, I'm gonna feed that way because it's gonna be on pairing and eating less. So now I'm gonna feed more, get a bit of fat. So like that, when they lose weight after breeding, they will be at a healthy weight. So even our females after laying keep a nice weight normally.
And that comes from experience, right? That's just having an eye for things, being able to see what an animal looks like, understanding what that prey item is going to do to that animal, and that's why the partnership works well, right? You have someone with
And
experience.
that's prevention too, like working like Joe work in the way that that's gonna happen, so I'm gonna act before. Like the female gonna lose weight after laying eggs, so I'm gonna make sure before that she have a bit overweight to make sure after she lays she have less consequences on her.
Yes, yeah. That makes sense. And so, what about you were talking about the tubs and how you're incorporating some enrichment. What about for the animals that you're breeding? Are there ways that you've incorporated enrichment into their setups?
Yes, I did, but I mean, I don't like do that to every tub necessarily. I let Joe do, and right now Joe does it by himself mostly. Like when I open tubs now, they have corks, they have some branch, they have some leaf, and that's funny because sometimes Joe will tell me, "Oh, that animal prefer that thing than that thing," and our animals all have names, so that's very cute. Like Mitski is my favorite snake at the store, and Mitski have things in his tub that I choose for Mitski, but some tubs are Joe, the animal that Joe loves a lot, and Joe like, because when you like an animal, you open their tub very frequently, you know? That's just a thing, and we have to accept that. We have favorites. I cannot say that every snakes we love them equals, and I think it's just normal. So when we love an animal a lot, we open the tubs a lot. But with those animals that we take special care of, because those animals, I'm in Mitski, I sometimes just clean his thing because I'm not supposed to clean at Exotic Addict right now. It's not my job. But for Mitski, when I open the tub and have time with him, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna clean that. It's a bit dirty, so I can put more stuff in his tub because I know I'm gonna be the one taking care of. But the one that I'm not opening as frequently, I have to be upstander for the staff. But doing that for a favorite snake make us learn about what is a good thing to put in their tub and what is not.
Yeah, exactly.
So
what species is he, just by the way? What species is this snake?
It's a scaleless black rat snake, a Lucy one.
Okay, cool.
But I have 3 scaleless black rat at home of my own, my trio that I'm going to breed eventually. And at first, I wanted Mitski, but Joe didn't sell Mitski to me, so I had to find my homes. So yeah, that's I offered to Joe lots of money for that snake.
And he said no.
He said no. I was very sad, but I mean, it is... I cannot, because Joe is like, Mary, you cannot just buy my animals and bring them to our home. That's not logical. You already have them. They are at our store. Like, buy your own and make something new. Stop trying to bring the animal of the shop home. I did that a lot when I had my own apartment and Joe had his apartment, his home. I was like taking animal of the store and bringing them in my own apartment just to have them with me.
Yeah. Just so you can kind of keep them, and it's not buying them, but you can at least try caring for them.
Yeah, I just had fun to say to you like, oh, can I have that snake at home? It's a keeper. You are making him grow, so I'm gonna take care of it for the time that is not ready to breed. And it was like, okay, but you cannot keep it. That's not a way to steal my snakes. You know that.
Yeah. As far as with working with the scaleless rats, do you have an ethical issue with working with those, or some people don't think they shouldn't be kept or shouldn't be bred? What's your thoughts there?
I think they are healthy animals. Like, I don't see a problem. It's not like the ball python that are scaleless that have no belly scales.
Mm-hmm.
This is something else. I mean, my rat snake, they move normally. They have enclosure with the same cork, leaf, and same things I use in all my enclosure. Never been hurt or something. They eat normally. They poop normally. They
Mm-hmm.
shed normally. So I'm like, why? I don't mind modifying the look of an animal with genetic, and the genetics need to already be in the species. It's not made into labs. It's naturally in the animal. So I don't see the problem. I think sometimes in reptiles, people are very conservative.
Mm.
I don't like losing the original morph and form of the animal. I think it's important to keep that too. But if you don't do that by when you do a morph, it's gonna be some inbreeding involved. I'm aware of that. I'm not like because sometimes people are like, oh, I'm against inbreeding, and then you look at their animal and it's all morph animals. I'm like,
Yeah.
that doesn't work like that. But you can reduce the inbreeding because right now I have the choice to buy my next rat snake from Canada or take them in the state to make sure to have another lineage. I can take my money, make more money to make sure to not have as much inbreeding.
Yeah, exactly. And so, when you're working with when you guys are breeding the snakes and you're working with the young ones especially, and you're sort of introducing them to different textures and enrichment and whatnot, when people buy those snakes, are they, I think you already mentioned, but I imagine most of them are going home with an enclosure or have an enclosure at home. They're not going home into a breeding, well, maybe, breeders would, but they're not going home into a tub setup for the most part.
Yeah.
And are they the snakes themselves are having success? Like, do you guys have lots of people having issues with them, or they eat well and shed well?
The only species that when I sell, I'm always like they are not necessarily gonna eat well are the ball pythons.
Right. Okay.
I'm not too much into ball pythons. I don't like nice pets ball pythons. That's great. It's a snake. They're pretty good. But I don't know, starting the baby is a pain. When I feed the rack ball python with the tongue and the frozen tod stuff, I'm like, it takes me so much time just to get them to eat, and I work so hard to switch them to the unfroze, so they naturally eat lives, and they like to eat lives, and like I make lots of works, and then I sell them, and sometimes they don't accept their frozen things. They want lives, and then you have to say to the clients like, now you have to go on lives for the health of the animal. So it's the only species that I will say I choose family that are ready for that. But
Yes.
mostly
Yeah.
they eventually eat whales, even the ball pythons in their new enclosure. And if they put enough stuff for them to be able to hide, that's better too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. I'm curious, because you live a life now where your income is solely related to reptiles, your job is reptiles. What is that like? Because there's lots of people that are listening that would have a dream of wanting to either, whether it's working at a store or owning a store or being a breeder or doing reptiles in some capacity. What is it like to wake up every day to know that it's just a reptile day? Like, is it starting to feel like work, or are you still enjoying it to the point where it's fun?
That's a good question. Can we just come back to the other subject before I wasn't
Sure.
finished on them?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Because I told about the ball python, which were the downside of it a bit, but I want to talk about the species that do great too.
Yes,
because
please,
they are.
Please.
So I have something in mind. I think some people will have problem with what I did because my goal is for the animal to, at the end of thing, to have the right enclosure. So if a client buy an animal and say to me, I'm ready to put the money to buy the full adult size enclosure, even if it's a baby of the year, I'm going to go with it.
Mm-hmm.
I know that not everyone agree with that, but I found out that when you do that, that person make me do the background of her is 36 by 18 by 18. I sold that for a baby corn snake. And it was a tiny snake, big as my pinky for the size. And I sold it with that. And the animal fed at the first meal. They were enjoying the enclosure. It was hiding a bit more than what they were expecting, but that's for me just normal for a snake that is in a new enclosure.
Sure.
And I like that, to be able to sell a setup that I'm like, if the animals end up all his life in that setup, I don't feel sad. It's acceptable. It's nice. I make the eyes in the background thinking of the size of the animal when it will be adult, and thinking to not let cracks for when it's a baby for him to eyes into it. But like, I can do an enclosure that's going to be nice for the animal its whole life, and the animal can start in that. And like that, the clients have to buy one thing, and I'm sure that the animals don't end up to live all his life in this little 20 gallon because a person never like upgraded the animal.
Yeah. I think that's that's a good way to go about it. I mean, if you have someone that's willing to commit that much financially, you want to support them in that and do everything they can to make sure they have success. And like you said, if they for some reason can't upgrade, or they that's as big as the enclosure is ever going to get, that's a lot better than just the starter kit that they never moved off of.
Yeah, and baby adapt well to bigger enclosure. Like, people think they do not, but you have to like put hides for their size. Like, you don't put the full adult hides. That obviously not gonna work. You have to put more hides since it's longer and things like that. But if you put enough stuff, nature is large. I mean, nature is not limited, so I don't see why snake cannot thrive in bigger enclosure.
Yeah, but you're right. The hide has to be small enough so it actually feels like a hide and not just another part of the enclosure.
Yeah, and the thing is, as a breeder, you have to make sure you sell an animal that is ready to be sold.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you remember, but when we sold you your rat snake, it was not quite ready when we wanted to ship it, and we make you wait. And that's something we do. If the animal is not ready, I'm gonna make the customer wait for the animal. I'm not gonna sell the animal if I'm not sure it's gonna go well at home.
Yes, yeah, you did. You said, yeah, we're gonna ship it, and then it was like, no, we're gonna wait another 2 weeks. And I said, okay, that's fine. Yeah, and then I think that was the right call.
We lose clients because of that, but I mean, clients that know why we do it and appreciate it, they talk about us, and we get more customers. So I don't mind losing a customer because they don't understand what we do for the well-being of the animal. Yeah.
Is there a certain group of species that are most popular that you're selling? I'm sure it's ball python and corn snakes, but you also work with quite a lot. Like when I see your table at the expos, there's quite a variety of things.
I will say for the snakes or Central American BCI, we do leopards and IPO bloods, that kind of morph. They stay smaller than the regular BCI. I mean, one of our male is like 4 feet, big like that, and it's like a 6 years old male, so it's very small for a BCI. And those sell very well because they have great personality. They eat great. When you explain the difference between a boa and a ball python, people will buy a boa. And I own personally couples of boa, and I like them a lot. And I think they are more suited to pet life. Like, if you want to free room your BCI to make them go around, come to you, etc., you can let them go back in their enclosure and they're gonna eat. Yes. Like my BCI, I take them with me here. I will handle them, let them go around, put them in the enclosure, and they will accept food. For me, that's a proof that it's not stressful for them to live that pet life.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, they eat all the time. And the best part about letting them out and free roam is they're very slow-moving snakes. So it's not like I'll let mine roam around my basement all the time, and I just set myself a timer so I remember to go check up on her. But it's not like a colubrid that's going to dart off into a vent or something and you'll never see it again. Yeah. They're so slow. Like I don't think they can even move fast if they want to. So it's a perfect. You're right. It is a very good a species for to be a pet.
Yeah, sometimes I call them kitty snake. Joe doesn't like that because you see, to me that gives the wrong idea of the animal. But I'm like, still, like, I can have them cuddle on my laps. I can like handle them, and I don't see, because I think that I'm big about into reptile care is the handling, because many people are against handling the animal too much. But I have learned in my zoo era that animals that live with humans needs to be used to humans and not stressed by humans. So for me, a reptile that you put your hands into the enclosure and they are so afraid, that's not a great life. I'm gonna put my hand into your enclosure, and sometime I'm gonna pick you up to make sure you are healthy and maybe even bring you to the vet. So if my animals cannot handle that without living a big peak of stress, they will not be happy captive animals. So I try to make people aware of being able to handle, like, in a respectful way, their animal, but still make them used to the thing they have to know. It's like when I have a client that have a dog that needs grooming, I'm like, you're gonna get your dog used to the dryer, you're gonna make your dog used to the bath, because he's gonna have to face that eventually, and you want to do that gradually and slowly, and do like training with it, and not just put it in a bath and get the animal so afraid. So I think it's the same for reptile. Like, it's not okay to take a reptile in your hands and like force them to stand still when you have to do, like, I don't know, they have suction, they have something going on. It's nice when they just sit there and let themselves like taken care of. And I know it's easier with some species, but even with flighty species, you can work with them. I was able to make my male Phelsuma enter a container when I wanted to switch him enclosure.
That's
like
pretty
Phelsuma
impressive.
grandis
Yeah.
are not handleable, but I was able sometimes even to make him go on my hands and switch him of enclosure without grabbing him, risking skin slides. So yeah, I think we have to be aware of the pets we are choosing, and be aware of, am I able to give them a nice life in captivity without being always afraid of me?
Yeah. Yeah. I know some people that even, like Lori Torini will do, if she has a snake that she knows needs to be going to the vet in a month or something, she'll do some handling, but then also even simulate like an injection, not actually put a needle in the animal, but simulate what that might, being held down and having something, an object touch the snake's body, like, maybe it's a pen or whatever it is. She's not actually doing veterinary work at home. It's a simulation, but just trying to mimic some of what that animal might experience, and
That's called
habituate that
medical
animal.
training.
Yeah.
That's called medical training, and we do that with most of mammals.
Okay, so there's actual, so then it carries over, right? We that's where we kind of see that separation. Well, we do it for mammals, but why wouldn't we do it for reptiles?
Yeah, and it's funny because in Facebook groups, if you post a picture of handling an animal that is not meant to be handling, people scream to, like, I will not say abuse, but something softer but similar to it, because I don't have all the words in English. But like, I'm like, okay, but you don't have the information. Maybe that animal was just pick up for a picture, pick up for health check. I mean, I don't mind someone that pick up an animal to check it. It's not a toy. I'm aware that my animals don't exist for my enjoyment, but like, they need to be able to be handled. And when I sell animals, I will ask people, how much do you want to handle that animal? How much is it important to you? And then fit them with an animal that will be happy with that, like that they will balance with each other.
Yeah, that's great. That all that makes perfect sense, and I think you don't need animals going to homes where people are wanting to hold them, but they don't want to spend the time to actually habituate to them. They're just once every 6 weeks going to reach their hand in and yank the animal out. It's not a good system. So can we get back to the question about just your work? How does it feel? Do you feel is it fun still, or does it start to feel like work? Or because like I said, there's going to be people listening to this that would be very envious of you.
I mean, that's funny, because if you have asked that to me last year, I will say to you, this is amazing. Reptile all day. with my boyfriend, all we talk about is reptile. When we do an activity reptile related, I was like very happy about it. I was like, this is like fantastic. And now I'm like, this is still fantastic. But now I realize that I let some part of me go to that many place to reptile. I let something that I like it to do go just because I was so focused on it. And I mean, it's still fun. I still like going to work to Exotic Addict, but the thing is, working at Exotic Addict is not just enjoying the animals. It's many things. It's still real work. I still have to do like some things that are not reptile related, and sometimes I have tasks that I don't want to do because when you go at work, you don't only do the things you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes me a lot like when I come back to home and I have to take care of my own animals, that is a bit harder right now to like go into my reptile room and be like, okay, there we go again. So I will say to people that wants to do that it's a lifestyle. It's not like just when you have a patient and you make it into work, you will enjoy your work more, but enjoy your patient less. It's like it's gonna meet in the middle of all that, and you have to see if it is something for you. And in my case, it's I make less money than what I was supposed to do into my own field, that is marketing, and I make that choice. But sometimes I'm like, I want nice things, like I want that thing, but do I have the money for that right now? Do we have make enough sales for me to afford that thing? Like, I have to ask myself more question about my finances than if I had a regular 9 to 5 job. So you have to wonder about that, because when you work into reptile, if you are working for someone, that's great. You're gonna have a salary that is stable and everything, but it's not gonna be a big salary like animal industry. I never saw an animal industry job that was big pay. I don't know for you. I don't know if in your podcast, if you meet people that are working in the animal industry and making money is easy, but I feel like it's a field where you know that it's harder to make a big salary out of it. And for my part, I'm a part, how do I say that? Travailleur autonome, because part of my money come from Konoha Reptile too, like my sales that I do there.
Yes,
and
yeah.
I have a salary at Exotic Addict, but I'm on commission because with Joe we defined that was the best way to pay me the value of my work.
Sure.
And still be affordable for the shop, because I'm not owner of Exotic Addict, contrary of what people can think. Me and Joe likes to keep things still separate. We've been together as a couple for soon 2 years, so we are still a young couple.
Yeah.
So we want to have our own things. So I will say, if you want to work in the animal field, reptile or not, be ready to work hard, to work long hours. And if you want to have money to buy nice animals and nice enclosure, that's maybe not the way to do it.
Yeah. It is good to see kind of that side, because you're right. You do get to work with animals. You have this opportunity, but you do sacrifice a lot, and that doesn't even go into like bouncing expos and setting up and tearing down. And I know that's a lot of work as well. Like you both leave the store to go to Toronto for the weekend. Someone's got to manage the store, or someone's got to care for those animals.
Roads.
Is that how long the drive is?
6 hours, yeah.
6 hours, yeah. So that's quite a haul. How often are you doing the expos?
Okay, so we were doing every expo for a bit, and
which
then
is like once a month, basically.
Yeah, and me and Joe were just so tired. So like we were starting to die from the inside, like it was just restless. And I was like, this is crazy, because I like the hypes of the expo. I'm a girl that lives by, like, I like to feel the adrenaline. I like events and things like that. So I was like, yeah, expo are fantastic. Again, that thing that like when you start something, everything is so nice. But then I was like, when we come back to the store, it's like, oh my God, we have so much work. We have so many things to attend to, see with the staff. And like, it was crazy. And even like with our personal animals, I'm paying someone to take care of my animal when I'm at the expo. So the cost of the staff at the store, the staff at home to take care of the animal, the gas money, the hotel room, everything, it's very costly. And me and Joe are lucky because we do always great at expo. People likes our table. We do nice sales, so that's every time it's worth it for us. But for the lifestyle, I'm like, we need to slow down. We need to take time for ourselves. And this year, that's what I learned. Last year, I learned to enjoy the hobby. I learned how magical it was to like at the expo. Everyone is so nice. It's so cool to talk with people with a similar lifestyle that you have, to be able to just talk reptile and not look weird, you know?
Yes. Oh yeah, I can totally relate.
So it's very a lot of fun, and then you go out with friends at night after the expo and everything. But when I was coming back to reality, I was like, no, that's too much for me. I just want to crumble right now. Like, I just don't want to like see all the work that I have to do. So me and Joe right now, we are taking it slowly for the expos. I don't know how many we will do, but we will be more careful when we decide to do one right now.
Yeah, and that's another thing that people, it's obvious, but also it's sometimes the obvious things are easy to miss, is when you're working with a business that deals with live animals, it's not, like we said, I think before we started recording, I mean, I said, did you enjoy your Christmas break? And you said, I enjoyed Christmas, but there was no break because, obviously you can't, even if the store isn't open, you still have to care for the animals that are there, and maybe there's a day off, but really it's when you're feeding and having to clean up after animals, it's a full-time thing regardless of your actual work day.
Even when you have staff, you need to make yourself available to your staff. So even on breaks, if they want to call you to like ask a question, I like to answer my phone and respond to that, because if I don't, next time they will do what they think is right, and maybe I will not be happy with what they choose to do because they don't have the experiences and whatever the reason. So I always make myself available to the staff when I can. So even on my day off, I'm available.
Yes. So if you want to do a reptile business full time, you really need to make sure you have a deep passion for it, but also understand that the sacrifice is pretty significant.
Yeah, but I think and the thing is, the people you chose to work with are very important too.
Right.
Me and Joe, we made quite a nice group of people at the store. Like, we have lots of customers that came in. We hang out with, we have fun at the end of the day. They help us a bit at the clothes and everything. We go to a restaurant all together, talk reptile and everything. So we made our own crew, and I like that. And now it's like cool because I can balance friends with reptiles,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
yeah.
if you want to work in the hobby, make sure to work with the people that you feel great with, and to choose what's the best for you. Are you a breeder? Are you a seller? Are you a keeper? Like, what do you like about reptile? Because the job you will find into the hobby is not necessarily what you want to do with reptile, and you have to think about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Like,
Go ahead. Oh, I was just saying, no, I think that's really good advice, because you can kind of get roped into things without realizing it. Well, actually, this is not what I really enjoy about reptiles, whether it's, who knows, there's a million different things. You see a lot of people get into breeding and then they don't like the business side. They don't like interacting with people, which is sort of, well, that's a big problem. If you don't want to interact with people and you want to sell things to people, it's going to be hard to run a business.
And that's why you need partner and choose the right partners to do that kind of thing. And right now with Joe, that's what we're going to do. I like to do social media. I like to talk with people. I like to advertise. I like those kinds of things. And now I was not doing it enough for the store because I was busy with other things. So we share the task to make sure that we are working on our strength and not working just to work, just to make sure the job is done. Because when we do that, like, Joe is not doing what he like, I'm not doing what I like, because I'm good with the staff and I train the staff a lot in the breeding facility. But if I do that, it's like I'm working in a breeding facility, not on the marketing and sales side. And that's not what I'm the greatest at. I'm good at it, but I mean, I cannot do everything. And that's what we are starting to figure out, me and Joe.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, Marie, this was a great conversation. Is there anything that you wanted to say before we wrap up? I think we covered kind of most of the things we wanted to talk about.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
If you have, do you have anything? It's okay if you don't.
No, go.
Yeah. I was just gonna say, can you let everybody know where they can find everything online as far as Instagram, anything else?
Yes. So Instagram, you have Konoha Reptiles, that you can go see what I do. You have Exotics Addicts on Instagram, on Facebook, and you have the website exoticaddict.com that you can go.
And if anybody's looking for an animal from either of the two businesses, they can just reach out and go from there.
Yeah, and I will always advise you can go on this website, but it's hard to stay up to date. And we can have other animals that are not listed, but we have friends that breed and everything. So always write to us. It's easier. You will have much more info. You will talk to a person. Then just look at the website.
So to wrap up, as far as future projects, where are things going? Do you have some ideas of is your focus just on Exotic Addicts and Konoha Reptiles, or you have some other things in the works?
Yes. So like I said, I want to go a bit more into filming and educating people for the reptile part, but I realized that I let a lot of me go into the reptiles, and having my new horse into my life make me realize that I want to work with other animals. So I started to offer positive reinforcement training for animal owner. So right now I'm training mostly horses, but I'm training dogs too. And sometimes I have trained cats in the past. So I offer that service at home or at the stable where my horse is. So that's a very nice project, and that gives me the chance to reconnect with a part of me.
Oh, yeah. Well, see, that's kind of nice. Then you can kind of start, because, as we learned at the beginning of the episode, you're an animal person at heart. So sometimes it's nice to, diversify it a little bit and start working with some other animals and other types of animals.
And clicker training is good for lots of animals.
Well, and like you said, it's the same kind of foundational learning as far as it doesn't really matter what animal you're working with, right? The learning is similar. Do you have an Instagram page or anything for that, or do you just do that on your own?
Eventually I will. For right now, it's publicized on Domaine de l'Alsa. That's the stable where I offer my service mostly. So for now it's there, but I'm going to open a new page, but that's still under working.
Yeah. So in between everything else, when you have time, you can start that.
Yeah, I'm going to make time, because I learned that you need to make times to the things that make you feel good.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Awesome. Well, Marie, thank you so much. Thank you for doing a great job just with the business, and it's always great to see you guys at the expo, and thank you for breeding such a beautiful rat snake for me. He's still doing fantastic, and thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thanks to you to invite me.
All right, that is the end of that episode. Marie, thank you so much for jumping on the podcast. I really enjoyed our conversation. I'll thank Joe as well. Joe, thanks for breeding. I've been absolutely loving my Japanese rat snake, so thank you for working with that species and giving me the opportunity to purchase one, and looking forward to seeing you both at the next Canadian Reptile Breeder Expo. I assume I will be there, but we'll see. Listeners, thank you so much for listening to the episode. If you did enjoy it, the best thing you can do is just share it, or give a rating and a review on Spotify and or Apple, depending on where you're listening to it, or drop a comment down in the YouTube section to be part of the conversation. If you'd like to support the podcast financially, you can do that over at patreon.com/animalsathome. For as little as 70 cents a month or so, you will be helping support 70 cents a episode a month. You'll help support the podcast, which really does go a long way to help me continue to produce the show. It's a lot of work and takes a lot of money to run the podcast, and every single dollar that comes to me is so greatly appreciated. I can't even begin to thank you guys enough. So thank you if you already are a Patreon member. Or you can also check out Custom Reptile Habitats, which is the sponsor of the podcast. There are affiliate links in both the YouTube description or the show notes. So if you use one of those links and make a purchase, a commission comes back to me at absolutely no extra cost to you, which of course helps me support the show as well. And I think that is it for this one. I will catch everybody in the next episode.